the existing non-conforming steps at their home. The original steps were about 3 feet wide with a 2.58-foot setback. The new steps are about 17 feet wide with a 2.58-foot setback, where a 5-foot setback is now required. The board may approve this request if certain conditions are found to exist.
Would you like the gentleman to come and speak to us?
Step right up.
Is that what you want, right?
Yes, please.
Sleeping at the switch, it's all good.
First of all, appreciate you guys letting me step up here and talk to you first. Just a couple things.
Could you please state your name and address?
My name is Thomas Von Entz. I live at 148 East 18th Street. Been there for 39 years, so it's not like I just walked there yesterday. Couple things. First of all, I didn't try to all I did was going to replace the wood that was rotted on my deck. I put this early 2000s. We built that deck, and it was in really bad shape. And that, man, I tore my knee up, so I couldn't do anything. So I had a young man help me out. We took the deck down, and looking at the way it was set before, we never intended to move the deck. I mean, the deck is the exact same. All we did is put the new boards on, right? This steps, and then when I think it was, I forget what the young man's name was, Nate or Ned. Yep, came by and I talked with him, and he had said, after going through it, he pulled the boards off, noticed that it was the exact same footprint that we had, right? And it was my fault because I thought we could just go ahead and do that. That's why I didn't pull a permit. So it's all my fault. I fall on my sword for that one because I didn't think you had to. Once I got the information back from the city, that's the first thing I did is went down. I came down and I talked with Trish and I talked to a couple other people, tried to rectify anything that was wrong. I guess the issue I have though is when talking to Nate, he said it was okay that we go ahead and change the top deck, change the stairs, do all that good stuff. But I have to get rid of the 3 foot on one side and the 10 foot on the other side. I never moved out. I never encroached further. It's in the same, all I did is I expanded the stairs is what I did. And what it's done for me, I mean, I just got done. I had surgery 2 weeks ago. So for me, I can go up anywhere on there. I've got elderly in-laws that are in their 80s. Man, it makes it easier for them as well. I mean, you don't have to go to a certain spot. You can go up on the side. You can go in the middle. It just all around. I mean, and aesthetically, I mean, it looks like, we try to make improvements. Okay, so doing that. I think anytime we start doing something, so do the neighbors, which is awesome. I mean, it's not that I'm trying to start it, but if I can, that's fantastic. So again, I started out just trying to replace the boards. Again, I did not try to go around the system. It was all my fault. I thought we could just go ahead and replace the boards. Again, I'll follow whatever you guys come up with, but I would surely like to keep this. Everybody in my neighborhood enjoys it. I've had people stop by, they're driving by and comment on it. I did not do anything maliciously or try to do it out of a system. And I've already called Trish a few times on some other things that I want to do around my house to make sure that we need to do it the right way. I guess I'm just here basically just say that I would appreciate it if we could keep it. Again, I will go with whatever the decision is. But I think the 3 feet on one side and the 10 foot on the other side, we're not going out any further. We're not going to be in the way of the snow plows or none of that. It was basically unused in the first place. So I appreciate your time. Again, if you have any other questions, feel free to ask. Shirley.
So you said that you came in and spoke to the city staff.
Yes.
After the fact,
Mhm.
after you had built it. And did you, at that point, did you take the time to read the ordinance and what
Mhm.
controls?
Yeah, Tricia had actually sent me all the information via email.
So what is your interpretation of expanding a non-conforming structure? Do you recall when you read that? I mean, did you?
I didn't expand.
You didn't expand.
Oh, I extended. I extended my stairs. I didn't move out of that. That's the same footprint that I had from 1985 or in the early 80s. I didn't go out of the system. All I did is I took the steps that we had and just added onto them along the front because it was unused space anyway.
Okay, just
Sorry.
curious about your interpretation of the rule. Thank you.
Did staff have letters one way or the other? I think, didn't we have some conversation earlier in our thing
Yes,
that said
when
there
we
was
get
positive
to the
feedback?
public comment period, Mallory has a statement she will make.
Oh, okay, excuse me. What else? We're all struggling here, so we're just.
That's fine, hey.
We're on the struggle bus.
Not a problem,
Just
not a
give us some
problem.
time here.
We had
No,
a
that's
good,
fine. I appreciate your time.
we had a good discussion for our study session. I appreciate my fellow board members, candor. Okay, so your interpretation of the rule is that expansion, what that means is that it's not encroaching further into the, in this case, towards the sidewalk. What was it, you felt like that, so the stairs were just only 3 feet wide, but you don't consider it expanding to go and make the stairs that had to be, at this particular point, are non-conforming, and laterally extend them, that doesn't constitute an expansion in your mind? It's
I don't
just-
think
it's
so.
a-
It was
it's an
unused
overall
property
footprint.
anyway. I mean, it was unused as it was. So, I mean, for me, I made it more safer, I feel. It's more safer now than it was before. I mean, if you look at the before pictures, it was pretty rough. Again, it's early 80s when we built that. Again, it was hard for my in-laws to navigate those stairs as it was.
So you didn't approach the city for a permit because you believed that because
Yeah.
the stairs were not going further towards the sidewalk, they shouldn't be a problem, and in your mind,
It's the same setback
square
that it was there.
footage, that
Yeah.
footprint is effectively the same. So as long as you don't go any further than, 2.58 feet, I
Yeah,
guess,
that's what
from
that's what the
from the
setback was. And that's
Um,
what Ned and I had talked about. He says, you're 2.5 setback or whatever, and he goes, that's fine. Because it was already existing. He says, and we're gonna go ahead, you can go ahead and keep that. So,
Yeah,
If I'm gonna
he
keep
said
that-
to keep that, but he didn't
Yeah.
know that you were going all the way across at the time, I
yeah.
assume. So the reason why we're on this struggle situation here is we're kind of weighing all the facts here. One of the comments with one of my colleagues here during study session was, and it's so close, to the sidewalk or the setback or whatever, and they expanded across the, like the front of their house. Concrete's not pretty, your deck's pretty. But it's still, our issue is we're concerned about opening some Pandora's box with this, one side perception, this expanded nonconformity. So you're not closer, but you're expanding the nonconformity. You were 20% or 10% of your steps was non-conforming versus, the width of your lot, but now you're 60% non-conforming in relationship, to the width of your lot. And so that's kind of where we're struggling here with how do we look at non-conformity, and are you increasing non-conformity? Well, one side could say yes, and another side can say no, and so that's why we're all kind of bouncing around here. We're not playing games with you. We're trying to make a good decision,
and I
for
understand
both
that.
the city and for you.
I understand that. I mean,
So
it
that
makes-
was the
it
that was the
makes-
example that I was given with the concrete. It's like, dang.
I mean,
I can see that'd be pretty ugly.
Yeah.
Concrete's ugly, or asphalt, or whatever the case may be. Your deck's nice, and so it pulls on the strings a little bit.
And it's the same as if I have, somebody down my block has got their stuff, they're sitting in their driveway for a month or two, right? I mean, I don't like that either, but I
Right.
mean, I'm not gonna go down there and make them move it, right?
Right.
For me, and again, I mean, I'm not trying to say, that for me, it was unused anyway. It was space that was unused.
Sure.
I mean, at the
I
end
like
of the,
what you
end of the day, I'm just looking at it like, okay, what I did is I just took the front of that. I mean, if you look at the way it was right now, there was nothing there.
Can I ask you, the condition, I mean, was the condition of the stringers, were they, I mean, the structure of the stairs, was that in question?
Yes.
Okay.
The stairs, the deck boards, what happens is it's all shaded in the front of the yard, okay? And when
Tell
it
it's green,
rains,
Yeah.
there's nothing, it just, I mean, what it did, it would make it really slippery and
Sure.
it just, the boards rotted.
Because you can, because the boards, the top boards, right, as we've addressed, you can take those up and
Yep.
put them back without any question.
Yep.
I mean, just the structural strength of the sides, the
Yes.
stringers, those were deemed
Oh, yeah.
rotted as well?
Well,
Okay.
that solid, the structure itself, the footings, everything, yeah, they're not going anywhere. Those things were solid. But, you know, at the end of the day, it's, you know, it was just, I looked at it, I mean, it's been a while, and I've, you know, again, I've had some injuries and things like that, so I haven't been able to get out there and do it. But I tried to get to that as soon as I could. The last thing I want to see is somebody come over to my house and fall through there, man, that would not be good. I mean, number one, I don't care about my insurance, but I don't want anybody hurt, you know?
Yeah.
And I think at the end of the day, you know, I mean, I'm trying to, you know, keep our neighborhood looking good. You know, I'm doing as much as I can. 18th Street isn't the freaking most popular place to live, but we're working on it. We are definitely working on it. My neighbors, man, I tell you, have come a long way. We've stepped it up. You know, and if I do something like this and it gets them moving, fantastic. I'm happy as heck. But again, I'm gonna go with whatever you guys come up with. But I'm bleeding for you, man. I really want to keep that.
How did you come up with that design to go all the ways across?
You want to believe
like
it? My wife came up with that.
It's on a Pinterest post, you know.
I think she had seen it at somebody's place, and she had told me, and I'm like, okay, we're already building it anyway, so. But that's where the problem was, right? I didn't think that through. I didn't think, okay, I know I can replace these boards. Why can't I just extend these stairs or expand these stairs, right? I mean, I didn't think it was an issue, and that's my bad.
I'm curious. So in 2000, I think it was 2005, the stairs were not
Cement.
and they were, when you replace them,
They were bad.
That was still a conforming structure that you put in
No,
a
they were
permit for?
actually further than that.
Oh, I mean, what you've just replaced, those wooden stairs.
yeah, the
those
wooden- yeah,
were
the stairs,
conforming
everything,
at the time. You had a permit for those.
Yep.
When you built those. So did you realize that the ordinances had changed and the setback expectation actually moved further back?
Not until Ned explained that to me when he came over and looked at the deck.
Okay.
He said that the ordinances have changed through the years. He says this was okay back in the day. He says, but now you're non-conforming. He says, at the end of the day, I can't let you keep building non-conformance. And I said, I don't plan to. That's not what I intended to do, right? I intended to improve my house, and at the end of the day, I had to fix the deck anyway. It was one of those things where a homeowner, you got to do it.
And it does look
I'm-
real nice. What you
Yeah.
did does look real nice.
Well, thank you.
That is not in question at all, by the way. It looks very nice. It looks very nice.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions from the board? No?
So the steps that are, the steps you built in '05.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so Tricia, I want to ask this of you. If he wanted to replace, so he had to replace the porch part because it was falling apart. But is it the steps that were non-conforming then? What could he have done to, in the same situation, replace things, make it safe, to make it conforming and not extend to non-conforming steps that suddenly became non-conforming because the ordinance had changed since '05? What could someone have done?
Say that again?
So, he
I think
wants
I
to-
know what you're saying.
Okay, the applicant has this original, let's look at the original moss-covered unsafe structure. That was conforming in the day. In '05, with those steps and everything, as you replaced in '05, In the meantime, the ordinance changed, so they need a 5 feet setback instead of 2.58.
Mhm.
So now today, if he had known that, if you had gone to the city first and asked what kinds of steps, what would they look like? What would have made this a conforming structure,
Okay, so the options
in your
would-
opinion?
Yep, so the options would have been, he could have put the non-conforming steps back.
Okay.
Built new.
Same footprint?
Same footprint, same size, same shape,
Okay.
same location, that would have been approved. Or I suppose the deck could have been modified to be smaller, to push the steps closer to the house to meet the required setback.
Or on the side, steps could have been.
Or
on
the
side.
steps could have been moved to the side. That's correct.
So just a quick question while we're on it. The steps that are on the side towards the driveway, those are fine, there's no issue with those?
That's what Ned told me.
Yeah, I
Okay.
believe that's correct.
Yeah, Ned
Those
said,
are
you do that all
conforming.
you want over there.
Okay.
I'm like, okay.
So yes,
Fantastic.
that's true. So if the steps were on the side of the structure, then the deck could have also been expanded from however deep it is now, all the way out to 5 feet. And then put the steps on the side.
So I have a weird question. Raised planter gardens made out of wood and stuff like that. How is that perceived? Yeah, she's cringing like a son of a gun. I know.
We had this conversation with somebody on the west side of
I can see
town.
that coming.
Okay.
Ouch.
Well, the landscaper had to take out a lot of material and create planter beds. But planter beds are not considered part of the structure, they're considered landscaping. So when we're looking at structure, we're looking at the deck, the stairs. So if they decided to take the boards off the top couple of
Left and right.
steps and put a permanent planter bed in there with dirt and soil and plants, that would be considered, I think that would be considered landscaping and not structure.
Okay.
Any more questions?
I do have one more.
Okay.
Distance
fine.
from your door to the edge of the deck, you know, is that 3 foot, 4 foot? Just out of curiosity.
I don't know right offhand. I
I mean,
want
what
to
would
say
you
probably
guess?
3 foot.
Okay.
Drawing says 8.
Oh, I'm sorry. What is it? I wasn't looking at it.
Well, it's the house to the edge.
Oh,
Is that what-
House to
There
the
you
edge
go.
of the deck,
There you
8
go.
oh no,
foot?
that's the whole thing.
That's all of it.
That's
Oh, that
including
would be the steps too.
Oh, I see,
Okay,
I see.
yeah,
Right,
yeah.
right.
That's the whole thing. The steps are on the right side too.
Okay.
I
Yeah, so you
gotcha.
pull 3 steps off there. Okay. 8, 6, so there's
Mine a rough drawing, sorry.
no, so you're it's
I'm
about,
not a
it's about
drafter.
5.5, 6 feet at least.
I'm not a
Okay.
drafter, man.
I'm good. Thank you.
Do I dare ask again, or any other questions?
Keep asking.
Alrighty, thank you, Thomas.
I did have letters already as well too. I don't know if those got to you
Yep,
guys.
I think we're getting to those.
Oh, okay.
Thank you.
You all good?
I think the clerk.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
At this time, we will open it up to any public comment.
So we did receive 7 letters in support of the application, which is included in the meeting packet.
Okay, good with that.
7 in support, none against.
Correct.
And are there any questions from the board regarding any of those letters?
No.
Okay, at this time, we are closing the public hearing. Time for the board discussion.
Discussion, something that I hadn't raised before. I think that we as citizens and our neighbors have an obligation to read the rules when it comes to something like this. It's no justification not to know what the law states, what the rules are for all of these kind of improvements to our properties. And on the other hand, I think the city has the responsibility for writing clear ordinances so that we don't have to go find attorneys to find out our understanding of the rules. The rules should be clear and transparent for all of us to understand so that we would know what to do without incurring further expenses. And so I feel like there's some confusion about some of the language in here, but that's just my own comment, and I wanted to say that before I made a motion.
And if you didn't, I'm just talking, if you didn't get what I was fishing for, I mean, my concern, and I don't know where this is gonna go, because we're like ping pong balls up here, but, we try to make things work for our residents the best we can. And, the last thing we wanna do is discourage people to improve on their properties, especially when the Joneses are setting the bar over here, you know, and people are reacting. So I was fishing for an alternative for him to fit within the rules with this planter idea. I don't know what the heck that looks like, but somehow not being punitive in what we're doing here, and the confusion and so on and so forth. So hopefully we can come to some resolution here one way or the other. I know we will, but that's what the idea was, trying to find a way to give the owner options, if there are options. So just a comment.
I think that speaks to the difficulty of this board in particular.
Yeah, it's hard to hear that as we're going through the ordinances, that we have to remember that just because we don't like an ordinance does not mean that we get to change it. That's not in our purview. We have to uphold, except in very exceptional, oddball circumstances. So what we're here to do is really to find those special cases, those strange ones, and pick those out and say, well, this really does not fall within the zoning ordinances, and this is a unique circumstance, and that's why we need to take action on this appeal in a certain way. So at the same time, it's frustrating to realize that the stairs initially, back in 2005 when they were done, the setback was one thing, and then since then the setback changed, and now he has 7 neighbors willing to write letters in favor of saying, like, this is a good thing, this is a nice thing, because to me it's almost like that ordinance changed, and yet the neighbors don't want that ordinance to be enforced. They're like, it's nice, he's not really impeding on anything in the neighborhood, it looks better. But I struggle with that, with the sequence of events. That had he back in 2005 made this same structure, it would look very nice and it would be conforming. But what's really just annoying me right now is trying to figure out what is meant by expansion, and what is expanding that makes something expanding and breaking the rules, versus just a colloquial, well, we think it's expanding, it looks like it's expanding, but maybe technically it's not. And what we have to figure out is the technical element of it. We have to figure out what technically is expanding here. Is it as we expand, let's call it expand laterally, and we're not changing that setback, we're not impeding, we're not going into the sidewalk any closer than was already there. Is that expansion, or is expansion only when you're breaking the rules, whether you knew it or not, unfortunately, and then you push further towards the sidewalk? And I don't know. I feel like there's like a square footage issue to consider as well. If he theoretically let's say he narrowed the stairs for whatever reason. Let's say he narrows them, but he also pushes them out. And the square footage is actually smaller. It takes up less space than before, but he's getting closer to the sidewalk. Is that expansion? I would contend that it is. And so in my mind, I'm getting expansion primarily for that setback number. That if that number increases into the setback even more egregiously than it was, then that's expansion. And I need someone to tell me whether or not you think that laterally is also expansion, because I run through the scenarios in my head, and I can see arguments in both directions, but I'm getting stuck on expansion is more or less being defined as just that depth of the setback. That value is what's critical. But I'm open to hearing that expanding also includes going laterally.
Well, I think that, I'm picking up on that point, I think if the city wanted it to include both things, in other words, the distance issue, which is the setback issue, and how much of this structure is in violation of that distance, they could have added something into this ordinance. They could have pulled both points, whether it's just the distance or whether it's how much of the structure is also non-conforming. But they didn't. It only says with respect to the setback. And the setback in this case means the distance. So if they wanted to include if the real meaning here was to include also a certain amount of the structure, they could have put that into the rules, but they don't have it here. And so a common person, like most of us, would read something like this, just like Mr., I'm sorry, I've forgotten your name, but interpreted it. That's how I would interpret it also as an ordinary person. And even if I read the rule, I would still stick to that because it says with respect to setback. So that's my.
So you think we might be giving definition or interpreting it in like additional ways that wasn't meant to be interpreted.
Or
That
as
the setback was specific, and we're adding meaning where there wasn't anything
Where it wasn't,
meant
where
to
it was
be.
inadvertently left off, something, if that's what the city's real intent was here, was to include how much of the structure was in violation of the setback, but didn't include it, well, I think that's on them, because I think we need to have a literal interpretation of what this says, because that's what most people use to follow. If they're gonna follow the rules, they look at the language, and the language doesn't say anything more than with respect to the setback. So a common sense reading of that is they're talking about the distance, just like that's what his interpretation of it was also.
Yeah.
And I would say that as well, is that we're not adding anything to this. We're just interpreting these few words. It says respect to the setback.
Mhm.
And once we say that, the setback is what it is. Did it meet a requirement or not? Whether, and to Fred's point, if they wanted to cover the whole front of the property, then that had to be defined somehow, and it's not.
Well, I also think, though, that we're directed to this other sections to consider, and we always talk about along and within for existing nonconformities, but that only applies to a side or rear yard. There is no application to that to a front yard. And when we talk about someone coming in for a variance for along and within, to say their side yard or rear yard, they have to come in to get a variance from us to say they had 3 feet coming out the side of their house and they wanted to extend the rest of their house out that 3 feet, we may grant that variance to be not more non-conforming, but along and within. Okay, so in the front we don't have along within and within, but what we're talking about here, the question is the expansion or modification of the structure shall not result in greater nonconformity, and if the structure, which includes the stairs, is now pushed out, all of it, to the 2.58 feet instead of just the 3 feet that was, we'll say maybe grandfathered in, I don't know if that's the right language, but grandfathered in as a nonconformity, I see this as a greater nonconformity now in a place where along and within does not apply.
But when you say greater nonconformity, you're left off with respect to maximum setback. And that's what it says. It doesn't add on to what you just said. And somehow we have to live within the language that most people read these rules with.
So I'm looking at it, and I'm hearing both sides here. So you're looking at, we're kind of like, you have these rules, and you have the rules that say the intent is this, and then we're kind of into the specifics. But if you read the intent, non-conforming uses and structures shall not be enlarged, extended, or used as grounds for adding other structures or uses prohibited elsewhere in the same zone district. So the intent is not to expand along, increase the size. So it's conflict. I'm just pointing out both sides. Like I say, I'm ping pong balling too. I'm with you.
So you think that the city used the word expansion as a way to, you think, more explicitly say that if it gets if a non-conforming thing against a setback gets wider, that constitutes expansion, and that's what they meant, and
Yes.
that's
Yeah,
what they're
further on in
really.
the intent, the paragraphs about intent, it's saying that the intent is for these things to not be increased or enlarged, et cetera, and that eventually the non-conforming use would go away, and as things change over time, that they want all these non-conforming use things to be rectified or resolved. They're discouraging, or the intent is to discourage continuing on with a non-conforming. And so by broadening the size of it, I think you're continuing on and impacting it even more, according to the intent. There's specifics below, but according to the intent, that's what I'm reading here.
But the language implements the intent. You know, the language stated, I had the same, when I read the intent, I read this, I had the same feeling there's a conflict between these two things. However, the language here implements the intent, and the language is very specific, and it leaves off this other dimension of what is a non-conforming presence. It restricts it to only two things, setback and height. That's what the rules state. So anyway, I'm ready to make a motion if anybody else wants. Should we just test the waters to see where we are?
I think so.
Okay. I move that the board approve the expansion of the non-conforming structure at 148 East 18th Street.
I will second that, Fred.
Second that. My reasons are the expansion will not result in greater nonconformity with respect to the maximum front and yard setback. The minimum parking requirements for all uses in the property are the same. And the third is the expansion of the structure shall conform to all other zone district requirements.
For the findings, could I get a why as to why? Oh. Could I get a why as to why the expansion would not result in greater nonconformity instead of just restating the question?
Yeah, the expansion will not result in greater nonconformity because the nonconformity we're speaking of is the setback, is the dimension between the house and the sidewalk, or the structure and the sidewalk. So it does not add to the greater nonconformities with respect to maximum setback or minimum height requirements.
Okay.
That's satisfied? Are we satisfied?
I'm good.
Okay, I think we're ready for a call for a vote.
All right, the motion is to approve Van Antwerp,
Yes?
Barr,
Yes.
Bedard,
No.
Shay,
Yes.
Davis,
Yes.
Fusak.
No.
Motion passes 4-2.
Okay, at this time, I believe we now have to address. No, just kidding.
Psych. I think we're good.
We're good. Next agenda item. Am I supposed to do something?
Approval of the minutes.
I'm sorry, I was waiting. Our next agenda item is to approve the minutes from our previous board meeting on July 27th, 2023.
I move to approve the minutes.
Support.
We have a motion to approve and support, and we just,
Say yea or nay.
Okay, calling for all those in favor, say yay. Okay. All those opposed, say nay. Motion passes. Next meeting is Thursday, October 26th. I think do I need a
Motion to adjourn?
motion to adjourn?
I'd like to make that motion to adjourn.
And I'll support.
All right, we have motion to adjourn and support. And
Aye.
I believe we're done.
We're good.
But we have to vote.
We do have to vote.
Oh, we got to
on
vote stuff for
adjournment.
that. Oh, thank you.
Yay or nay?
Thank you, Fred. That's why we brought you back. All those in favor of adjourning, say yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Get me out of here.
Okay, I'll, thank you.
Good job, Brad.
Well,
Thank you, guys.
yep.